Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back into a world of damp stone chapels, creaky floorboards, and the faint scent of boiled linen and candle wax. The bells toll across the crooked village, echoing through fog-drenched valleys, and you barely more than a child stand shivering at the altar, fingers clasped in sweaty palms that don't feel like yours. You've never met the person you're about to marry. Not really, but your life is about to become theirs. Forever. Or at least until death, which in this time is probably closer than you think. The flowers in your braided hair are wilting. The priest looks bored. You can feel everyone's eyes on you, but no one is asking how you feel. Because they all already know it doesn't matter. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere unusual, or just want to say hi, post your location and your local time down in the comments. I always love seeing where these sleepy little trips take us. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing to understand is that in the Middle Ages, marriage had almost nothing to do with love. It was a transaction, a contract not between two people, but between two families. And you standing here in your stitched wool dress with a mouth gone dry from nerves are a commodity. You're about to be bartered off like land or livestock, because that's what makes sense to the people around you. Maybe you're lucky, and your family has a good name, a bit of land to your name, or a dowry that makes you at least worth haggling over. Maybe not. Either way, your future has been traded already. You hear the priest mumble in Latin. You don't understand much of it, but the phrases roll over you with a kind of weight. Sacramentum matrimoniae. It sounds holy, yes, but also final. Permanent. And this permanence isn't romantic, it's restrictive. There's no divorce, no takebacks, no figuring it out. You are joined in the eyes of God and man. From this moment on, your body, your work, your future children, and even your soul are now tied to your husband's estate, whatever that is. And you might not even live to see your 30th birthday. See, the truth is getting married in the Middle Ages wasn't just a rite of passage, it was a risky endeavor. For women especially, the dangers stacked high. Childbirth was one of the leading causes of death. Marital rape wasn't a concept anyone would recognize as abuse. You were expected to obey, to bear children, to run a household, and to never complain. Because suffering quietly, that was considered virtuous. Outside the weather shifts, it always seems to be raining on wedding days. Maybe it's spring and the fields are just beginning to green. The muddy road outside the church is lined with neighbors and second cousins, none of whom know you well. But they all know the expectations. You're to smile, to accept your place, and to step gracefully into the unknown. You've probably been told a dozen times today to be a good wife. Not once has anyone explained what that really means. You try to focus on your husband's face, perhaps a stranger, perhaps someone you've seen once at a harvest feast. He's older, of course. He's been working the land, or swinging a sword, in the name of some lord or bishop. He's had more of a life than you, and probably more than one tumble in the hay. But now he's here yours, or rather, you're his. Marriages were often arranged when children were still in cradles. Betrothals could be promised before your baby teeth fell out. Sometimes two toddlers would be engaged before they could speak. The real union might not happen until puberty, but even then you'd have no say in it. Canon law technically required free consent of both parties, but that was mostly a formality. A girl saying yes under pressure, counted as consent. And pressure, it was everywhere. And yet, for all its seriousness, the ceremony might be laughably casual. You could technically be married with nothing more than a verbal exchange in a field, as long as both of you said the right words. Some couples were joined in secret, just speaking vows to each other without any witnesses. It created a legal mess for the church, but it happened often enough. The more noble your family, the more strategic and political your wedding became. But even peasants took it seriously. Marriage, after all, shaped property rights, inheritance, social standing. It was the spine of medieval society. You walk out of the chapel with flowers at your feet. Some are trampled. Behind you, the guests begin to murmur and disperse, heading toward the ale and stewed turnips waiting at the communal table. A musician scratches at a fiddle. It's time for the wedding feast, or at least whatever version your family can afford. If you're lucky, there's roast goose. If not, cabbage. Always cabbage. But your thoughts aren't on the food. You're thinking about the marriage bed, the expectation to consummate, the sheets that might be inspected for blood. Your mother told you about it vaguely, or maybe she didn't. Maybe you were told only that it's your duty and that it will hurt and that you mustn't cry. Maybe your new husband is kind. Maybe not. Either way, there's no going back. This is your life now. You look at the horizon, the sun sinking behind the hedgerows. It's a beautiful evening in a way. Quiet. The kind of light that turns the earth golden and makes the sheep look like ghosts grazing in the mist. But you don't feel peaceful. You feel small. Not because you're weak, but because the world is so big and old and full of rules that have been etched into stone long before you were born. And those rules, they aren't in your favor. Already your mind is racing with what comes next, how to manage the house, when to rise, what prayers to say, how to please him, how not to anger him. You've heard the stories. Women who talked too much. Women who couldn't bear children. Women who dared to run. The punishments ranged from being cast out to being beaten or worse. The law gave your husband authority over you. The church taught that he was your head, your guide, your master. And you were to be humble and faithful and fertile. The feast begins. Laughter bounces through the crooked beams of the hall. A dog barks beneath the trestle table. You sit beside your husband, cheeks flushed from more than just the warmth of the fire. You smile when expected. You eat what you're given. You thank the priest. You pretend this is all normal, and in a way it is. For everyone here, this is the pattern of life. But for you, it's the beginning of a long, uncertain road. One paved with expectations you didn't choose and endings you may not survive. And tomorrow, you wake up a wife. Forever. Morning comes not with birdsong, but with the weight of realization pressing against your chest. The soft clatter of wooden shutters, the low bleating of a sheep beyond the fieldstone wall, mundane sounds of village life. But today, they feel heavier, more final. You open your eyes to a small, drafty room. The linens are coarse, the air smells of smoke and old straw, and beside you lies a man you barely know, your husband. This is your life now. You shift carefully. Last night is a blur of awkward silence and clumsy hands. Pain lingers between your hips, a reminder that something sacred, or at least socially sacred, has been sealed. No one asked how it felt. No one will. You're expected to carry on to smile as you rise and begin your duties. And those duties begin immediately. The concept of a honeymoon is a luxury that doesn't exist for your class. There's no retreat to a countryside cottage or distant town. You don't get time to bond or laugh or discover quirks in each other's personalities. That's a privilege of modernity. Here now you rise and begin the rhythm of wifehood. You'll be judged by how quickly you adjust to it. Breakfast is thin porridge, and it's your job to prepare it. If you're from a poorer background, you're already tending the hearth, learning how to balance iron cauldrons over embers and how not to burn the barley. If your husband's family is wealthier, there might be a servant or two, but that doesn't mean you're exempt. You're expected to supervise the kitchen, the accounts, the stores. You must keep beeswax for candles, dried herbs for fevers, wool for mending, and prayers for patience. You're young, maybe 13, maybe 15, old enough by medieval standards to be a wife, a mistress of the household, and soon, God willing, a mother. But emotionally, you are still so much a child. The other women know it. Some are kind. They offer little bits of advice muttered as they help grind flour or collect eggs. But others watch you with suspicion. You're new. You're competition. Or worse, you might fail to deliver the one thing that matters above all else, a healthy son. You step outside, apron tied loosely, feet in worn leather shoes. The village smells of damp earth and animals. Life here revolves around cycles, planting, harvest, slaughter, Lent, feast days, fasting. You're expected to keep pace with them all. If you falter, the consequences can ripple beyond your own household. A missed chore might mean spoiled food or ruined clothes. A careless word might offend your husband's relatives. A barren womb might shame your entire lineage. Marriage in the Middle Ages didn't just bind two people, it tethered you to expectations that were public, unforgiving, and often lethal. For a man, marriage offered a kind of stability, a legal and spiritual framework in which to claim land heirs and status. For you, it was more like being pressed into a mold, reshaped to serve someone else's legacy. Even your prayers are expected to change. You're to ask God for fertility, for grace, for humility. You might clutch a wooden rosary as you kneel in a cramped chapel, whispering words you've been taught, but don't quite understand. The saints you appeal to are often women, St. Margaret, patron of childbirth, or St. Anne, mother of the Virgin Mary. You beg them to help you survive the trials that are now inevitable. The midwife in your village is a wiry, sharp-eyed woman who smells faintly of wormwood and smoked meat. You've seen her from afar, helping bring babies into the world, and sometimes burying them. She's not formally trained, but her knowledge has been passed down through generations. She knows how to turn a breech baby with her hands. She knows which herbs can slow bleeding or encourage labor. But none of that guarantees survival. When you were a girl, you might have watched the women carry off a motherless infant wrapped in a cloth that had once been meant for celebration. The idea of death in childbirth isn't new to you. You've known it all your life. But now it looms closer. Because now it's your womb that matters. And it's your life on the line. You return indoors. Your husband asks for ale. Not sweet conversation, not gentle interest in your thoughts or dreams. Just ale. That's normal. Marriages weren't built on companionship. A husband might never speak to his wife beyond the practical. If he's kind, he won't beat you. If he's pious, he'll pray with you. But if he's cruel, the law offers him near total power. The church taught that a husband was the head of the household, just as Christ was the head of the church. Your role was to submit. Not blindly, they might say, but faithfully. Marriage was described as a remedy for lust, a necessary arrangement to prevent sin. Affection was nice, but not essential. The real aim was order God's order. That and children. And children come fast. Once you've been proven, once your first bleeding returns, and the signs align, everyone waits to see if you'll quicken. The midwife will press a palm to your belly. Your husband will begin to speak of names of inheritance, of small shoes to carve. No one asks if you're ready. It's assumed. Ready or not, you belong to this path now. You might secretly hope for a girl. Someone to coo at someone soft and safe. But you also know what that would mean, another life bound for the same fate as yours. If you bear daughters, your value drops. Too many daughters and your family's fortunes wane. Sons, on the other hand, carry on the line. Sons protect you, inherit for you, and give you standing. Even your safety long-term may depend on the sons you bear. And if you don't conceive at all, whispers start. Maybe you're cursed. Maybe you're sinful. Maybe you're secretly barren and your husband has grounds for annulment. He might bring your case to a bishop, claim the marriage was invalid, demand a new wife. You might be cast aside, sent back to your family in disgrace, or worse, left to rot without support. There are no fertility clinics, no tests, just suspicion and shame. And so each morning you check your body for signs. You pray without knowing what you're praying for. You listen to the village gossip, hoping your name isn't in it. And when your husband touches you, you close your eyes and try to become what they say a good wife should be: silent, yielding, grateful. Outside, children run barefoot in the mud, chasing chickens and laughing without consequence. They remind you of a time not so long ago when you were just like them. But now you are set apart, a wife, a woman, and soon perhaps a mother. The seasons turn. Wheat grows tall. The days grow longer, then shorter again. And with each cycle you change too, learning to smile at the right times, to hide tears, to endure discomfort like a badge of honor. You master the unspoken codes. You kneel at Mass with bowed head. You supervise the slaughtering of pigs. You patch linens and pray for healthy births. But even as you adapt, there's a quiet voice in you that remembers the girl you were, the one who dreamed of stories or saints, or just a future she could shape herself. That voice is small now, soft, but it's still there somewhere beneath the surface. And as night falls again over the fields, you slip into bed beside your husband, listening to the wind creak through the shutters. You close your eyes and brace yourself for the life ahead, one breath at a time. You wake before the rooster, before the morning light slips between the cracks in the shutters, before the fire has been stoked. Your bones are stiff. The blanket smells faintly of mildew and smoke. The air is chilled as always, and you pull your shift tighter around your shoulders before stepping softly across the packed dirt floor. The day begins early for a medieval wife, and it begins with silence. Silence is safer, expected. There's flour to sift dough, to knead pots to scrub. If you're lucky, you have an older woman to guide you through this first year. Maybe a sister-in-law or a cousin who married young too. Maybe not. Either way, you're learning through observation, watching how to turn dried peas into soup, how to stretch a rabbit stew to feed more mouths than meat allows. You learn how to balance a ledger with pebbles or parchment, how to make candles from tallow without letting them crack. Everything has a rhythm, and absolutely everything rests on your shoulders now. You manage a household that may include servants, children, animals, in-laws, and sometimes even tenants. Your husband might be away for days or weeks at a time, working in the fields, traveling to settle debts conscripted into military service, if the Lord demands it. In his absence, you become the steward, the substitute head. But don't mistake this for freedom. It's merely responsibility without the name. And then there are the expectations no one writes down, but everyone enforces. You must not be idle. You must not speak too freely. You must not let your hair down literally or figuratively outside of private spaces. You keep your head covered in public not just out of modesty, but to show you're respectable, married, claimed, safe from suspicion, at least in theory. Because in this world, suspicion is a powerful, dangerous thing. A woman seen speaking to the wrong man, walking alone, or simply lingering too long near a neighbor's home can draw whispers. Those whispers grow. And once your reputation is stained, it rarely recovers. You are not afforded the luxury of innocence. You must be proven good again and again every single day. Your husband, meanwhile, is praised if he is firm, respected if he is distant. Should he raise his voice, it's because he is a man. Should you raise yours, it's because you are unruly, a scold, a burden. The laws in many parts of Europe even allow for public punishment of scolding wives, ducking stools, for example, where women were tied to chairs and dunked repeatedly into rivers as public spectacle, all for nagging, for arguing, for failing to keep their mouths shut. And what about affection? Well, if you're hoping for a touch that lingers, a glance that warms, you'd best keep that wish tucked away. Romantic love might develop over time, but it is not a requirement of marriage. In fact, it's rarely expected. Love, if it exists at all, is quiet and dutiful, expressed through shared labor, healthy children, and small kindnesses rarely noticed by anyone else. You might sometimes look across the village square and see a different man, one whose smile makes your stomach flutter, or whose words seem gentler than those you hear at home. But that's a dangerous path. Adultery, especially for women, is not just a moral failure. It's a crime. A risk of death, of exile, of shame so thick it clings to your descendants. A man might stray and be forgiven. A woman might die for it. So you learn to bury those feelings. You learn to let them pass like dreams slipping away by morning. You keep your head down and your hands busy. You might hum to yourself as you stir a pot, or hang linens not out of joy necessarily, but because the rhythm helps. Because the silence can feel so vast otherwise. Sometimes you catch yourself looking at the younger girls, the ones still playing with sticks and scraps of cloth, their futures unwritten. And you wonder, did I ever seem that free? Did I ever laugh without knowing what came next? The answer is yes, and it feels like a lifetime ago. One day you find yourself late in your bleeding. The signs are there: soreness, a shift in appetite, the faint queasiness in the mornings. You know before anyone else, and yet you say nothing at first. There's fear beneath the hope. Because while a pregnancy can raise your status, bring praise and purpose, it can also bring death. A dozen complications can kill you before the child is born. Even more can kill you during labor. And afterward, fevers, infections, torn flesh left to fester in silence. But when the signs become clear, when the midwife is called and the news is confirmed, Your house erupts in cautious celebration. Your husband beams. Your in-laws whisper prayers. The village women offer smiles and advice you didn't ask for. You are for now a success. The months pass slowly, each one tightening around you, like a corset you never agreed to wear. Your back aches. Your feet swell. You still have to work to tend to kneel at Mass. But people look at you differently now, as a vessel, a bearer of legacy, a hope for continuity. Not a person exactly, but a function. When labor begins, it does so quietly. You are led to a room darkened by blankets. Herbs are burned. Cold water is fetched. The midwife arrives with practiced hands and an expression that says she's done this dozens of times. But no two births are the same. Some are easy. Many are not. Yours is not. The pain begins low and sharp, rippling through your spine and belly like fire. Time becomes meaningless, just a blur of breathing and pushing and praying. The midwife murmurs encouragement. Another woman grips your hand. Maybe it's your mother or a friend or a stranger brought in to keep you from biting through your lip. Screams are not frowned upon, but they are expected to be brief. You are not meant to make a spectacle. You are meant to be strong, to bear it with the dignity of a Christian woman. You are told that Eve sinned, and this pain is your burden. Part of the curse. And when the child finally comes bloodied, wailing alive, you hardly register the sound. You are floating, drifting between exhaustion and disbelief. The midwife announces the gender. A boy. Relief floods the room, for now your place is secure. But you're barely conscious. You've torn. You're bleeding. The midwife presses herbs to your body. A candle burns low. You're feverish within hours, your body trembling under layers of wool and prayers. Someone spoon-feeds you broth. You can't hold your baby yet. You barely understand that you survived. And not every woman does. Outside, the village moves on. Carts roll through muddy lanes. Boys chase pigs. The chapel bell tolls for vespers. Life does not pause for your pain. It never has. When you finally open your eyes again and hold your child, your son, you stare at him for a long while. His eyes are squinted shut, his fists balled like he's ready to fight the world. And maybe he'll have a better chance than you did. Maybe. But even now, in this tender moment, you know what's coming next. You'll be expected to recover quickly, return to chores, smile at guests, and eventually try again. Because one child is never enough. And your body, it is no longer yours. It belongs to your husband, your family, your lineage. It belongs to the church and to custom. And above all, it belongs to the expectations that no woman in your position can ever fully escape. The weeks after childbirth pass in a strange, suspended state. Your muscles ache in places you didn't know existed. Your breasts swell painfully with milk, and your nights are a haze of crying and rocking and half-remembered prayers. But no one calls this a time of rest. If anything, the moment the baby is born, the clock resets. You are still expected to run a household. You are still expected to host guests, tend to animals, manage supplies. There is no maternity leave in the Middle Ages, only survival stitched together by routine. At least for now, you are admired. Not for who you are, but for what you've done. You've produced a son. The old women in the village nod approvingly when you pass by, and your husband walks with a slightly more noticeable swagger. People treat him like he's achieved something, as if the baby were his effort alone, as if you were simply a vessel he used well. And in some ways, that's exactly how the system was designed to see you. Your body has changed. Your waist is softer, your hips wider. You walk differently now, more cautious, more tired. But there's no time to reflect on these changes. The child needs feeding, changing, rocking. You learn to function on fragments of sleep. You hum when you stir the fire because the baby's restless, even in dreams. And though it's not expected for husbands to take part in childcare every once in a while, your husband might hold the baby for a moment, just long enough to hand him back before the child cries. Breastfeeding is expected and public. No one averts their eyes. There are no shawls or private corners. You feed when the child cries, even during a church service, even while kneeling before an altar. Your own needs are always secondary. You eat only after everyone else. You clean before you rest. You bathe last if there's any warm water left. The church teaches that a wife's body is her husband's to command. You are not to deny him even after childbirth, even if you're in pain, even if the wounds have not healed. Marital relations are expected to resume as soon as possible, preferably within a few weeks. You may cry silently through it, but still you comply. There's a grim kind of camaraderie among the other wives. You exchange glances over water buckets, brief nods in the chapel pews. No one complains aloud. Complaining is dangerous, but there's a shared understanding. You all know the weight of these unspoken rules. And when a woman disappears from the village, carried away by fever, childbirth complications, or something worse, no one asks too many questions. The silence is its own kind of grief. By now you've learned how to read people's expectations, like signs carved in stone. You know when to speak and when to stay silent. You know how to hide your exhaustion behind a half smile. You know that even though you are surrounded by people, family, neighbors, clergy, you are often in the most important ways alone. And as the months roll by, the baby grows heavier in your arms. He grabs at your hair, babbles nonsense, kicks his legs with joy when the sun hits his face. He does not yet know how dangerous the world is. How unforgiving. How many things are expected of him simply because he is male? He will learn. You meanwhile prepare to conceive again, not because you are ready, not because you want to, but because spacing out pregnancies is a risk few families are willing to take. Birth control exists in whispers only. Midwives and herbalists sometimes know of teas and tinctures made from pennyroyal or mugwort. But using them is dangerous, not just for your body, but for your soul. The church condemns any attempt to avoid conception. You are supposed to be fruitful. You are supposed to multiply. Every child is a blessing, they say. But you know the truth, every child is also a gamble. Disease is constant. Coughs turn into deadly fevers. Rashes become infections. Teeth rot. Bellies bloat with hunger. Half the children born in your village will not see their 5th birthday. And when your baby so much as whimpers in the night, a bolt of fear shoots through your spine. You hover near him constantly. You listen for his breath in the darkness. You wake to check if his skin is warm, his cheeks flushed. You never truly sleep again. And through it all, your husband remains the same. He might be kind or cold, gentle or rough, but his world has not changed as yours has. He can leave the house freely, attend meetings in the manor, drink ale with other men. He can go days without thinking about the laundry or the leaky roof or whether the child's fever is rising. You are the one tethered here. You are the constant. Sometimes he brings news from outside, tales of bandits on the road, rumors of war or a tax collector coming through the shire. You nod and listen. But these things feel distant. Your world is the world of the hearth of food and cloth and illness and chores. A single unexpected guest can throw off your entire day. A torn roof tile becomes a crisis. A late frost threatens everything you've preserved for winter. You keep a tally in your mind: how many eggs collected, how many loaves left, how many hours of daylight remain. Every mistake costs something. You cannot afford to slip. There are feast days, moments of reprieve when the church calendar permits a break from labor. You might wear your best smock, brush your hair with more care, even dance a little with your husband, as minstrels play a crooked tune on a cracked fiddle. For a moment, under the garlands and flickering torches, you almost remember what it feels like to be young, to move for the sake of joy, not obligation. But it fades. The next morning, you're back at the grindstone. Literally, if your house lacks a mill. You might spend hours grinding barley into flour, your hands aching, your shoulders tight. Or you might be spinning wool, twisting flax into linen thread, repairing a child's tunic that was torn climbing a fence. And all the while you're counting the days again, watching for signs of pregnancy, dreading them, hoping perhaps, but mostly fearing. You don't speak your thoughts aloud, of course. A woman who speaks too much is a burden. A woman who doubts God's plan, dangerous. You kneel in church and repeat the prayers. You ask the Virgin Mary for strength. You light candles for the souls of the women who died in childbirth, for the babies who never opened their eyes, for the quiet griefs that fill your world like smoke fills a room. But no one talks about that. They talk about saints and martyrs, about obedience, about God's design. And you listen. You smile, you nod. Because you're a good wife. Because you're still alive. Because in the Middle Ages, that's more than many women could say. The days stretch long in summer, filled with sun and sweat, and the ceaseless rhythm of labor. You move through them like a well-oiled wheel up before dawn, tending the fire, feeding the animals, nursing the baby, washing cloth, and preparing meal after meal with barely a pause. You barely notice the ache in your back anymore. It's just part of you now, like your shadow or your silence. Your marriage has settled into something steady, though not necessarily safe. There are days when your husband speaks to you like a partner, brief but polite, asking for your opinion on how much barley to trade or whether the roof needs patching. But there are other days when his voice sharpens, when the ale has run too freely, or when the harvest prospects look poor, or when the baby cries too long into the night. On those days, you do not meet his eyes. You speak only when spoken to. Sometimes you wonder if this is what all marriages are like, or if others have found something gentler. But such thoughts are dangerous. They serve no purpose. You are not here to seek affection or fulfillment. You are here to serve, to maintain, to bear, to endure. Still, there are moments that catch you off guard. Your child, now nearly walking, giggles uncontrollably when you blow on his belly. Your hands, rough and cracked from scrubbing and scrubbing, manage to stitch a new gown from a bit of linen your mother left behind. You hum a hymn under your breath, and for a heartbeat, It feels like your soul remembers something older than obligation. But the world beyond your small cottage does not slow down. And marriage, even once it becomes routine, is not a shield from danger. In many villages, a husband holds legal rights that would horrify modern eyes. He can discipline his wife with physical force, so long as it's deemed reasonable. And what counts as reasonable, that depends on who's watching or if anyone is watching at all. If your husband were to strike you for disobedience, no one would rush to your defense. The law and the church both frown on cruelty, yes, but they also frown on disobedient wives. You're taught that a woman's patience is a virtue, that your suffering will be rewarded in heaven, that a good wife brings peace to her home. So if peace requires silence, you stay silent. Some women speak with their eyes, some with their hands, how tightly they grip a spoon, how carefully they arrange dried lavender beneath a pillow. You learn to read these signals, and you send your own. You learn which women are safe to confide in, and which will carry tales straight to the priest or your husband's sister. There is gossip, of course. Always gossip. The woman who dared to wear crimson on a feast day. The one who walks alone at dusk. The girl who was sent to live with distant relatives after a betrothal mysteriously fell through. You listen with an ear tuned for caution. Every story is a lesson, every whisper a warning. You sometimes think about the church, the very place where your marriage was consecrated. Its cold stone walls, its flickering candles, its echoing Latin chants. The priest preaches of unity and sacrifice of love as Christ loved the church, but there is little mention of joy. Marriage is solemn, a duty, a burden made holy by enduring it without question. You wonder now and then if the Virgin Mary ever felt like this tired, worn, thin, praised for suffering. You wonder if the saints ever dreamed of running away. But you push the thoughts aside. They lead nowhere good. Better to stay rooted in routine. By late summer, the harvest begins. Your household, like every other, throws itself into action. You rise earlier than ever, preparing thick porridge and watered ale for the workers. You carry baskets of turnips and onions until your arms ache. You thresh grain in the heat, your hair sticking to your forehead, your skirts damp with sweat. There's no such thing as rest. Not now. Not for weeks. But the harvest brings more than work. It brings anxiety. A poor yield could mean hunger or debt, or worse, a reason for your husband to sell off land or livestock, or even in some cases, you. Not as a slave exactly, but as a political tool. If a husband finds no use for his wife, he can seek annulment. And though rare, it happens. Grounds can include infertility, infidelity, or a marriage never fully consummated. In those cases, you might be sent back to your father's house if he'll have you. The fear of being discarded lingers in every breath you take, so you redouble your efforts. You praise your husband more. You keep your house spotless. You discipline your child gently but firmly. You smile when his mother visits. You hide the exhaustion etched beneath your eyes. And even if you stay married for decades, even if you bear children and manage a thriving home, your security is never absolute. If your husband dies, for instance, your fate lies in the hands of his heirs or his will. Some widows inherit land and become modestly independent. Others are quickly remarried, often to someone much younger, as if passed like a parcel. Still others are pushed out entirely, especially if they have no sons. You've seen it happen. the old widow forced to live in her brother's barn, the one-eyed crone whispered about as a witch because she outlived 3 husbands. Widowhood can be a blessing or a curse, but it's always a turning point. One more test, one more reinvention. But that's far off, you hope. For now your child clings to your skirts, toddling on chubby legs. You breathe in the scent of drying apples and fresh hay. You recite your evening prayers without thinking, the Latin rolling over your tongue like river stones. You survive, because that's what marriage demands. And when you lie down beside your husband again, the straw mattress prickling your skin, you stare at the ceiling beams and wonder, not for the first time, how many women before you did the same thing. How many whispered the same thoughts into the night? How many dreamed not of escape, but of simply being seen? But you do not say it aloud. You turn on your side. You sleep, or try to, because morning always comes, and with it your duties begin again. The chill of autumn slips into your bones before the leaves begin to fall. You feel it in your fingertips when you wash linens in the stream in your breath, as you bend over a pot of simmering stew. The seasons change, and with them the rhythms of your life as a married woman. There is food to preserve, wood to stack, clothes to mend before winter arrives in full. Your hands never stop moving. Marriage, you've come to learn, is as much about endurance as it is about obedience. Endurance of labor, endurance of silence, endurance of what is not said aloud, but understood deeply, that you are always being watched, not just by your husband, but by the village. Women are the glue of this world, and the first to be blamed when it cracks. You rise before the sun and walk the perimeter of the small yard behind your home. There's a hen with a lame foot. The herbs are browning. The child coughs in his sleep, and that simple sound ignites a panic in your chest you can't entirely explain. You touch his forehead, cool for now. You whisper a quiet prayer under your breath and tuck another cloth around him. It's around this time, when the harvest is in, the nights are long, and the hunger creeps in, that marriages begin to fray. The cracks you once ignored widen. The patience you practiced begins to falter. Your husband, once tolerably silent or dull, may grow irritable, even cruel. Not always, but often enough that you learn to watch his mood the way sailors watch the sky. You measure his footfall as he enters the house. Heavy, drunkite, and distracted. Your shoulders tense accordingly. One word too many could sour the evening. One forgotten task could be enough to earn you a snapped command, or worse. You are no stranger to the back of his hand. Not frequently, just enough that you've stopped flinching when he raises it. And still you say nothing. What could you say? That you're unhappy, that you're afraid, that sometimes you wish you died in childbirth like so many women do, just so you wouldn't have to keep waking up to this. You say nothing. Because even misery is better than scandal. The church teaches that a woman's suffering is redemptive, that a good wife prays harder when she is struck, that she offers her bruises up like alms. There are saints who bore cruelty with holy silence. You are not a saint, but you try, because you fear the alternative, because a wife who fights back risks everything. You cling to the things you can control, the food you prepare, the clothes you make, the words you teach your child, who now toddles after you like a shadow, repeating sounds, gripping your skirts. You show him how to fold cloth, how to speak softly in church. You dread the day when the tenderness in his eyes hardens into the same grimness you see in the men around you. But for now, he is yours, your comfort, your reason to persist. And as the days shorten, you bury yourself in work. You help slaughter pigs and hang salted meat in the rafters. You dry apples and cabbages. You mend holes in woolen cloaks. You watch the candle stores dwindle and you ration the beeswax carefully. You're never really alone. Even solitude is a privilege you don't possess. But loneliness, that's something else. You feel it in your chest like a cold draft. No one asks what you think. No one asks what you want. Your inner world, your dreams, your memories are yours alone. Sometimes you hold them close like a secret, just to remember that you still exist. Once on a rare trip to the market, you hear a minstrel singing near the edge of the square. His voice is soft, the lyrics full of longing tales of women who vanished into forests, who turned into birds, who escaped marriages through magic. You freeze for just a moment, clutching your basket. The story clings to you like smoke, but you shake it off. The cabbage is wilting. The child is pulling at your sleeve. You have no time for fables. Still, that melody stays with you for days. Whispered in your mind as you stir the pot, echoed in your humming, when you press herbs into oil for winter medicine. It reminds you there is more to the world than this. That somewhere someone is singing, not for duty, just for beauty. The first snow dusts the ground like flour. You watch it fall from the edge of the doorway, arms wrapped around your middle. It's quiet, beautiful even. Your husband curses the cold and slams the door shut. You brace for the long season ahead. Winter is the true test of marriage. When there's nowhere to go, no field work to distract him, no market to break the routine, your husband's temper begins to turn brittle. He drinks more, grumbles more. He grows restless and irritable. You tread more carefully than ever. Even a misjudged glance can ignite an evening of sharp words and thrown crockery. The child, too, becomes clingy and sickly. The air inside the cottage is thick with smoke and damp with the breath of too many bodies in too small a space. Colds linger. Fevers return. You try your best herbal brews, warm cloths, whispered prayers. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. And yet you keep going. There is no other choice. On Christmas Eve, the village gathers in the chapel for Mass. You wear your best wool dress, patched at the elbows but carefully brushed. Your hair is braided and pinned beneath your veil. The cold bites through your cloak as you walk. The snow crunches beneath your boots. Inside the chapel, the air is heavy with incense and wax. You kneel beside your husband, your child curled sleepily against your shoulder. The Latin chants rise. The candles flicker. You close your eyes and imagine for a fleeting moment that you are not here. That you are in a warmer place. That your body is whole. That your voice is heard. That love is something more than obligation. The moment passes, but you hold on to it. It is your Christmas gift to yourself, this brief, impossible dream. Outside, the stars are bright and sharp in the black sky. You walk home slowly, carefully, the child bundled against your chest. Your husband walks ahead, muttering to himself, kicking at the snowdrifts. You say nothing. You're a good wife. You're still breathing. And tomorrow, the work begins again. Winter presses in like a weight you can't lift. The cold doesn't just creep under the door. It settles into your bones, into the stone floor, into every joint in your hands. You learn quickly how to move without wasting warmth, how to dress in layers of scratchy wool, how to sleep curled tight to conserve heat. Your body no longer belongs to you. It's a tool, a furnace, a source of milk, labor, and pain. You feel it most in these long, dim weeks when daylight slips by in a blink and the darkness seems to last forever. The child wakes often. He coughs in his sleep, clings to you with sweaty hands. You soothe him with lullabies you can barely remember learning, words passed down from your mother or maybe overheard in someone else's cottage long ago. You hum them now quietly, even when your throat is sore from the smoke. The fire never quite keeps the chill out, and most nights your breath clouds in front of your face as you work. Your husband drinks more. It's not unusual, everyone does this time of year. The ale and mead help pass the time, numb the cold, dull the disappointments of another year with too little profit, too many demands. But drink makes him louder, less patient. He never needed much excuse before, and now cooped inside with little to distract him. His fuse is shorter than ever. Sometimes it's just a shout, sometimes more. You've learned how to step aside without drawing attention, how to anticipate his moods and avoid triggering them. The bruises are hidden beneath your sleeves, your collar, your silence. You whisper prayers not for deliverance, but for just one quiet night. One day without raised voices or the child crying in fear. There is no one to tell, no one who would do anything. The village women know. They see the way you carry yourself, the way you lower your head, the way your smile never quite reaches your eyes anymore. Some of them have the same look. Some of them used to. Others judge in that unspoken way women sometimes do to protect themselves. Well, I would never let that happen. As if you had a choice. There are no laws that protect you, only laws that bind you. If you were to run, you'd be hunted. If you were to strike back, you'd be punished. If you were to speak out, you'd be accused of dishonor, disobedience, sin. So you survive. And winter continues. You ration the food carefully. There are turnips, onions, smoked meat, just enough maybe if you're clever with portions. You make broth stretch for days. You slice stale bread thin. You teach your child to chew slowly, to be thankful, to stop asking for more. Hunger is normal here, part of life. Another thing to endure. And in the background of everything always is the ticking clock of your body. You wait for your bleeding. You dread it, and you dread its absence. Either way, there is no rest. If you are not already pregnant again, it's only a matter of time. And if you are well, it's time to start preparing. Pregnancy in winter is worse than in summer. The cold stiffens your joints. Your energy drains faster. If the birth comes too early, you risk losing the child. If it comes too late, you might lose yourself. But it's not as if anyone asks whether now is a good time. The calendar isn't yours to write. The midwife visits once, pressing your belly with cold hands. She nods with satisfaction, tells you the baby is growing well. She leaves you with herbs and warnings: keep warm, avoid strain, pray daily. You nod along, knowing full well that avoiding strain is a luxury you've never had. And yet, amid all this bleakness, there are slivers of softness. Your child, still small, still babbling, touches your face with chubby fingers and smiles. You sit with the other women mending clothes, and someone tells a silly story, that makes you laugh until your eyes water. You find a moment to breathe alone in the woodshed, the only place no one bothers you, and the silence is so complete it almost feels like a gift. You treasure these things. They are rare, because the world doesn't wait. The lords still send messengers demanding grain and livestock for taxes. The priest still reminds you from the pulpit that suffering is sacred. The neighbors still expect you to appear at feast days and baptisms and funerals, your head covered, your expression calm. One day word comes that a girl from the next village over has vanished. Some say she drowned. Others say she ran. Her name is whispered with both pity and scorn. A foolish girl, someone says. Didn't know how good she had it. You say nothing, but you think about her for days. Did she have someone waiting for her in another village? Did she walk out into the snow with no plan at all? Did she just decide she couldn't do it anymore? And would anyone ever dare say the same about you? Probably not. You are too careful, too compliant, too good. But you think of her anyway. The end of winter is muddy, grimy gray. The snow thaws into slush. The roofs leak. The firewood is almost gone. Your fingers crack from the cold and never fully heal. You dream sometimes strange, tangled dreams of water and fire, of running barefoot through fields of laughter that feels like it belongs to someone else. You wake to your child crying, or your husband snoring, or the bitter sting of another day already beginning. You rise. You gather the kindling. You stretch the broth. You keep your voice steady. The truth is, you've gotten good at this. Not the marriage exactly, but the survival. You've learned how to keep your thoughts private, how to move through the world like a shadow, how to take pride in the small things, clean linens, well-mended seams, a calm night without shouting. You've learned that your own needs must be wrapped up tightly and stored away like precious cloth saved for a better season. Maybe that season will never come. But you don't dwell on it. You just keep going. Because in the Middle Ages, a married woman's best quality above all others is her endurance. And you, despite everything, are still here. The first signs of spring are small and almost cruel in their subtlety. A single crocus pushing through the mud near the well. The sharp call of a bird you haven't heard in months. A faint loosening in the earth under your boots. But you don't dare celebrate yet. The snow might still return. The winds still carry frost. And besides, your life doesn't change with the seasons, not in any way that matters. Your belly swells again, slowly, insistently. It's not your first time, so the signs are clear. Your breasts ache, your appetite flickers, and the nausea clings to you for hours in the mornings, fading only when the work demands your focus. No one congratulates you yet. It's too soon. Too many women have lost children in these early weeks, and everyone knows it's bad luck to speak hope aloud. Still, the whispers begin again. The older women smile knowingly. The midwife offers you a look, a mixture of pride and warning. Your husband is quieter than before, satisfied perhaps, or maybe just counting. How many mouths, how many sons, how many chances at legacy. You begin to count too, not the days of the pregnancy, but the days since you last felt safe, if ever you did. Each morning you take inventory. What hurts? What still works, what's been worn through your body, is not your own. It belongs to the needs of others. But you are the one who must carry it. You and no one else. You walk carefully now, not just because of the child inside you, but because everything in this world is a hazard. The path to the well is slippery. The livestock pen is narrow and unforgiving. A simple fall could end everything. You know stories, women who slipped and lost their babies, women who bled for days, women who labored for hours in the dirt, only to be buried beside the child the next morning. The church teaches that pain brings you closer to God, that motherhood is sacred, that you are blessed to be a vessel for life. But none of that changes the reality that you are terrified. You still have to work, of course. Pregnancy is not an excuse to rest. You wash clothes until your knuckles sting. You scrub floors on your knees. You lift water buckets from the well and carry firewood on your back. Your body screams at you, but you have learned to ignore it. Complaints are met with judgment. No one praises a wife who listens to her own suffering. Your child, your first, still needs you. He is curious now, clumsy, prone to running headlong into trouble. You chase him through the fields, laugh breathlessly when he tumbles into a pile of hay. You smile when he brings you a beetle, when he offers you a rock as if it were a treasure. You don't know how to explain the world to him yet. You just teach him what you can: kindness, caution, prayer. Some days you hold him longer than necessary, pressing your nose to his hair and breathing him in like he's the only fresh thing left in your life. He smells of soil and bread and the faint sweet scent of milk. You wonder what he'll remember of this time, if anything. Will he remember you as tired? Will he remember your quiet weeping in the dark? You push the thoughts away. You can't afford them. Midwives say the second child is usually easier than the first. You hope they're right. The last birth nearly killed you. The pain, the tearing, the blood that wouldn't stop. You still have dreams about it. Flashes of red, and the sound of your own ragged breathing, the way the world narrowed to a pinprick of light at the edge of your vision. You remember the midwife shouting for regs, the prayer whispered too quickly. But that was then. And now you prepare again. You dry herbs. You set aside cloths. You stitch another swaddling wrap. Not because you're ready, no one is, but because pretending you are gives you something to hold on to. Outside, the fields are waking up. Men begin tilling the soil, their backs bent against the wind. Your husband sharpens tools and speaks to your neighbors about planting. You watch from the doorway, your hands pressed to the curve of your belly. Life begins again, even when you are too tired to notice. There's talk of a fair this year. A few days of color and song and trade. A chance to sell wool, to buy soap, to see strangers. You might be allowed to go if your husband is in the right mood. If the baby hasn't come yet. If you can walk without too much effort. The fair is a rare treat. You remember going once as a child, gripping your mother's hand as she pointed out spices and cloth and ribbons you couldn't afford. You remember the music, the strange, otherworldly tunes plucked from lutes and hurdy-gurdies, the smell of roasted meat, of sweat and perfume and dust. It felt like a dream, a place where time shimmered and bent. Now the idea of it feels distant. A fair requires cheer, and you haven't felt truly cheerful in years. But still you hope, quietly. As the days lengthen, you spend more time outside. Not for leisure, Leisure is a word that barely exists for women like you, but because the light makes the work more bearable. You hang linens with numb fingers, sew by the window, let your child play in the dirt, as you watch from a stool mending a tunic for the new baby. You've stopped thinking of what you want. You focus only on what's next. It's safer that way. Sometimes you watch the unmarried girls of the village, their laughter too loud, their braids swinging as they chase each other past the well. You hear them talk of weddings, of gifts, of handsome young men with strong arms. They don't yet understand what marriage means, what it takes, what it costs. You want to warn them, but you know they wouldn't listen. You wouldn't have listened either. Instead, you smile gently and offer a nod. Let them have their dreams for now. They'll wake up soon enough. And when they do, they'll find themselves where you are, kneeling before the fire, stitching in the half-dark, whispering prayers for strength you never thought you'd need. The first crocus blooms fully one morning. You kneel beside it as if in reverence. You reach out, not to pick it, but just to touch the petal soft as breath. It will be gone soon. But for now, it's here. And so are you. The days warm slowly, and with each one your steps grow heavier. The baby inside you kicks often now, strong and certain. You feel him in the middle of the night, and again before dawn, a constant reminder of what's to come. It's not fear you feel exactly, not anymore. You've moved past that into something quieter, something colder. A kind of resignation wrapped in practiced hope. You know the risks, you know the cost, but you also know the ritual. You know how to endure. By now, the other women have begun to prepare for your confinement. It's a word you've come to resent. You're not being punished, and yet everything about the process feels like a sentence. You'll be shut inside for weeks, cloistered in dim light, forbidden to touch cold iron, watched constantly for signs of danger. The church approves of the practice. It calls it necessary, holy, even to keep a woman removed from the world until she is purified. That's the word they use, purified. Because childbirth is messy. Bleeding, screaming flesh tearing open, often followed by death. And in the church's eyes, what is messy must also be sinful. So you will give birth, and then you will wait. You will not be allowed back in church until 40 days have passed, and the priest has blessed you with the rite of purification. Until then, you are seen as unclean. Your belly leads the way now, when you walk brushing against tables and door frames. You waddle more than walk. You sleep propped up on folded linen, one hand always cradling your side. Your first child looks at you curiously, his small hand resting where your belly rises. He doesn't understand what's happening, only that something is. You wonder if this child will be like him or if he will survive at all. You do not say this aloud. No one ever does. But the fear lives in you. It grows alongside the baby, pressing against your lungs, whispering to you in your dreams. Sometimes you wake in the dark, heart pounding, certain you've already lost him. You press your fingers to your belly until he moves. Then you cry in silence, careful not to wake anyone. Your husband does not speak much of the coming birth. He assumes it will go well. That's the way of men. He makes no preparations, takes no special care. He simply expects results, a living son, a healthy wife, a return to normal. You know better. You've seen women disappear behind the veil of childbirth and never return. They're remembered with half sighs and vague praise. She was a good wife, they say. She bore children well. Then they are replaced. Their memory softened into convenience, their absence filled with new hands and a fresh body. You wonder if you would be missed, truly missed, or simply replaced. The midwife visits more often now. Her hands are quick and practiced. She presses your abdomen, checks your color, your breathing. She advises warm baths, soft bread, no climbing stairs. You nod, but inside you know you'll do what you must. The stairs won't climb themselves. The laundry won't fold. The chickens won't feed each other. And there's no one else to do it. The household doesn't pause for your pregnancy. Your duties continue up to the edge of labor and often beyond. You remember a woman in your village who went into labor while hanging laundry. Another who gave birth in a field, her cries mistaken for singing until someone ran to check. They survived, barely. And then they went back to work. You prepare the birthing room. It's the same as last time, a small corner of the house curtained off with linen made soft with straw and cloth. You hang dried herbs nearby, lavender, mugwort, rue. You boil water. You set aside clean cloths, oil, and the special binding rope the midwife will use if the baby turns the wrong way. You whisper prayers to Saint Margaret, the patron of childbirth, and to Saint Anne, the mother of Mary. You cross yourself with every kick. You mutter Hail Marys as you grind herbs, as you stir the pot, as you mend your child's worn tunic. And then one morning, as the sun rises and the birds sing like nothing is about to happen, the pains begin. They start low, familiar, deep. You say nothing at first. You keep working, folding cloth, feeding the chickens, stirring the porridge. But within an hour, the cramps return, stronger now and closer together. You grip the table and breathe. The child watches wide-eyed. You send him to fetch the midwife. By the time she arrives, the pain has wrapped itself around your spine and refuses to let go. The room fills with heat and whispers and urgency. Someone puts cool cloths on your forehead. Someone boils water. Your husband hovers in the doorway, then disappears. This is not his domain. He will return only when there's something to see. A son to hold. A success to boast about. The labor stretches long. You lose track of time. Your world becomes a tunnel of pain and prayer and breath. You squeeze someone's hand until you're sure you've broken it. You scream despite yourself. The midwife murmurs encouragement, but her voice comes from far away. At some point you think you might die. You're not frightened exactly, just tired, so impossibly tired. You wonder if it would be easier to just stop, to let go. But then something shifts, a push, a cry, a sudden gasping release, and then he's here, red, wrinkled, squalling, alive. You lie back shaking, blood seeps beneath you. The midwife works quickly, her hands steady. You feel the afterbirth slip free, the weight of your body returning to itself. Someone places the baby in your arms. You look at him, you don't smile. Not yet. You're too afraid to believe it. But he's warm. He's breathing. And for now, that's enough. The women begin to clean. The child suckles his mouth, rooting blindly against your breast. You close your eyes and rest your head back. And outside, unnoticed, the crocuses begin to bloom again. You spend the first few days after the birth wrapped in linen, and fatigue eyes rimmed with shadows, arms aching from the weight of the child that never leaves them. Your body is no longer yours. It isn't even fully healed, but already it's been repurposed again. A provider of milk, a warm nest, a steady source of comfort. The baby cries often. He feeds constantly. He startles at every noise, and so do you. The birth was a success, yes. You lived. He lived. But there's little time for triumph. No one brings flowers. There is no peace and quiet, no procession of cooing visitors bearing casseroles and praise. You return to the world of labor almost immediately. By the end of the first week, you're mending cloaks, sweeping the hearth, and kneeling to scrub the floor despite the ache between your legs. The blood hasn't stopped yet. It won't for a while. You pad yourself with folded linen rags and change them in silence, washing them secretly ashamed of the stains. You still haven't left the house. You can't not until the purification rite. It's a strange thing, this belief that you are unclean for having created life. That you, a mother of two now, are somehow spiritually tainted simply because your body did what nature demanded of it. But this is the world you live in. And so 40 days after the birth, you rise early and prepare for your churching. You wear your plainest dress, washed carefully, no adornments. You cover your hair, hold your baby close, and walk slowly to the chapel. Your feet are sore, your back still tender. The other women nod as you pass. They've been through it. They understand. The men barely look, and inside the priest meets you at the door. He says the prayers in Latin. You bow your head as if you understand every word. The rite is short, but it feels endless. You are reabsorbed into the community, declared clean, allowed once more to kneel beside your husband during Mass and take the Eucharist. It's supposed to be a moment of joy. But all you feel is the weight of returning, back into a life that hasn't waited for you, back into expectations that never left. The house is loud when you return. The older child is climbing furniture again. The baby needs feeding. Your husband is already asking what's for supper. You smile faintly and say something soft, something safe. You hide how hollow your arms feel when they are not holding one of the children. How quickly you've vanished into the routine again. There is a brief celebration a few days later, a christening feast. Not for you, of course, for the child. Your husband beams as he gives the baby's name to the priest. The godparents come forward, chosen more for their social value than any real affection. There is ale stew and a few pieces of barley bread. Someone plays a broken pipe. Someone else sings a song you barely recognize. You sit quietly, baby in arms, the older child on your knee, trying to keep both from crying. The baby is baptized with cold water and firm hands. He wails. You do not. You simply bow your head and pray again, not out of joy, but out of habit. As the guests leave and the crumbs are swept up, you begin to plan your return to full labor. The fields are calling again. The livestock need feeding. The spring rains are soaking the path to the well. You'll need to carry water carefully now, balancing the baby in a sling while coaxing the toddler to follow along. It's a dance you've already memorized, even as your muscles still scream for rest. You hear murmurs now and then from other wives, whispers passed in moments of rare privacy of women who bled too long after birth, and never recovered, of bellies that swelled again too quickly, of husbands who grew impatient with weak wives. These whispers chill you more than the spring wind ever could, because you know you'll be expected to lie with your husband again soon. Probably tonight. It doesn't matter that you're still healing. It doesn't matter that you flinch at the thought. The law says your body is his. The church says the same. Refusal in many places is a sin, and sins demand punishment, if not by man, then by God. So when he touches your arm that night, when he mumbles something half kind and half impatient, you close your eyes and breathe. You pretend you're somewhere else, not out of betrayal, but out of necessity. You go where your mind must to keep your body from shaking. Afterward, you lie awake long after he's begun to snore. The baby stirs in his cradle. You rise without thinking. Lift him, press him close. His little body is warm, steady, real. You rock slowly, silently in the dark, and you wonder what it means to be a good wife. Is it this, quietly enduring, whatever comes without question? Managing the house, the meals, the children, the mood of a man whose emotions dictate the atmosphere of every room. Is it faith? Is it submission? You look down at your baby's face, peaceful in the faint moonlight. You think of the girls in the village, the ones who are just reaching marrying age, their futures already drawn out like threads in the hands of fathers and priests. You think of the little girls you once played with, the ones who didn't survive their first pregnancies, the ones who wasted away in shadowed corners, the ones whose names you whisper in prayer, not because the church tells you to, but because you remember. And yet you get up again the next morning, because the bread must be baked, because the fire needs tending, because the baby will cry, and the child will climb, and the chickens will scatter unless someone keeps the world turning. That someone is you. It has always been you, and no one will thank you for it. But you keep going, because you must. Because in this life, in this marriage, in this world, being a woman means surviving quietly enough that no one notices you're falling apart. You're back on your feet by mid-spring, though back is a generous term. Your feet still ache. Your legs feel like wood when you stand for too long. But the fields don't wait, and neither does the family. You lift the baby with practiced arms and adjust the sling across your shoulder, pressing him tight against your chest. Your older child has taken to shadowing you like a second cloak, mimicking your movements, asking questions you're often too tired to answer. The village begins to buzz again as the air warms. Plowing and planting resume in earnest, and your husband spends more time outside. That should be a relief. His absence brings peace, but it also brings more work. You're left to manage everything else: the children, the cooking, the repairs, the garden, the animals, the laundry. The list never ends, and no one keeps track of it but you. Still, there's something slightly easier about the warmer months. The sun helps. The air smells like grass and wet earth instead of soot and damp linen. The children catch fewer fevers. The hearth doesn't need to be fed every hour. Your hands are always full, but they're no longer frozen. You catch yourself humming as you stir stew, not because you're happy. Happiness is a luxury, but because it keeps your mind from splintering. It's during this time that a new wife moves into the village. You spot her at the well one morning, trying not to slip in the muck, while balancing a pail that's clearly too heavy for her. She's young. Younger than you were, maybe. Barely into her teens. Her eyes dart nervously whenever someone speaks to her. She's been here less than a week, and already you see the signs. The forced smiles, the stiff posture, the way she clutches the edge of her veil as if it's a rope holding her in place. You don't speak to her at first. That's the way of things. Everyone watches for a while, observes, evaluates. You remember being in her place, the uncertain glances, the tight-lipped greetings, the constant pressure to prove yourself worthy of the role you've been forced into. Eventually, your paths cross again in the chapel yard. She fumbles with a basket of cloths, and you step in without thinking, steadying her load with one hand while balancing your own baby with the other. She murmurs a thank you without meeting your eyes. Her voice trembles. You nod but say nothing. It's enough. Over the next few weeks, you find ways to help her quietly, leaving extra firewood near her door, slipping her a handful of herbs for the scratches on her arms, showing her with gestures how to sling a baby more comfortably. No one else notices, or if they do, they say nothing. Women helping women is the only way anything gets done around here, even if it must be done in secret. You hear things, of course. Her husband is rough, impatient. She hasn't conceived yet, and the whispers have already begun. Some blame her, others say she's lucky. You know better than to hope either way. At night you think about her and how easily her story could be yours. How easily your story might still end like hers. The line between a manageable marriage and a dangerous one is thinner than anyone wants to admit. It can be crossed in a heartbeat, in a drunken outburst, in a single terrible moment. So you tread carefully, always. You measure every word, every glance, every pause. Your own husband has been quieter lately. Not kinder necessarily, but less loud. The harvest season looms, and with it come new worries, yields, taxes, demands from the manor. He mutters to himself, more sharpens tools in the evenings, drinks less, but fumes more. You know the signs, they never lead to anything good. Still, you make the effort. You prepare his meals on time. You keep the house clean. You flatter him softly in ways that feel like breathing through wool. You do all of this not out of love, but out of survival, out of strategy. Because if you make his life smooth, maybe yours won't shatter. Sometimes you think about the girls who ran, the ones you used to hear about in stories. A girl who climbed a tree and never came down. One who swam across a river and vanished into the woods. They're told like fables now, morals wrapped in mystery. But when you lie in bed at night, baby curled against you, husband snoring behind you, you wonder where those girls went. If they survived, if they found freedom. You'd like to believe they did. You'd like to believe there's something else beyond this endless wheel. But belief is dangerous. It leads to hope. And hope in a world like this can be lethal. So you cling instead to what's real. The softness of your baby's breath. The steady weight of bread rising in the oven. The warm water on your fingers when you wash the dishes. The brief smile of the new wife when she passes you and dares to meet your eyes for just a second longer than before. You've become something of a guide now, not because you chose it, but because you've survived long enough to be useful. You know how to dodge questions, how to quiet children, how to keep accounts in your head when there's no parchment to spare. You know which herbs ease pain and which to hide. And you know that none of this guarantees safety. But still, you wake up. You work. You carry your child on your back, your past in your chest, and your future in the form of another endless to-do list. The days grow longer. The trees bloom. The birds return. And you still tethered to this life learn how to float through it without drowning. The summer heat comes in waves, sticky and relentless. It seeps into the cracks of the cottage, into the folds of your dress, into your very breath. You rise earlier now before the sun crests the hills, just to have a few moments of movement before the day turns heavy and still. Even the chickens move slower in this heat. Even the air feels tired. Your baby clings to you constantly, skin damp, and warm eyes bleary with the confusion of heat and light. Your older child has taken to hiding under the table during the hottest hours, turning scraps of cloth into imaginary kingdoms. You let him. It keeps him quiet. It keeps him safe. Your husband complains more. The weather makes him irritable. He curses at the livestock, at the poor soil, at the buzzing of flies. He drinks in the evenings, wipes his face with the back of his hand, and looks at you like he expects something, gratitude maybe, or just silence. You give him both. You've learned by now that survival means choosing which parts of yourself to share and which to bury. You wonder sometimes if you're still the same woman who stood at the altar all those years ago. The girl with the stiff smile and trembling hands. You try to recall what she thought marriage would be, what she hoped for. You can't remember. Maybe you've forgotten on purpose. Marriage in the Middle Ages is not a joining of souls. It's a structure, a role, a weight. You are wife before you are woman, mother before you are self. Your name is spoken only in relation to others, his wife, their mother, the good daughter, the obedient housekeeper. Your identity is a cloak you wear for others' comfort. You attend a wedding in early July. A cousin barely older than your son. The girl is younger than you were. Her gown is borrowed, her smile painted on. You see her fingers twitch as she walks down the aisle. You see her eyes dart toward her mother, then toward the door. She doesn't run. They never do. The wedding is loud and full of ale. A pig is roasted. The priest blesses the couple, mumbling words he's repeated so often they've lost shape. Everyone claps when the couple kisses. You don't. You hold your baby tighter and whisper something in his ear, a lullaby or a prayer, you're not sure which. The night after the wedding, your husband expects you to be inspired by all the talk of love and fertility. You are not. But you smile and let it happen because it's easier than refusing. Easier than trying to explain that you are not a vessel for his moods, that your body is not a reward for his patience. Sometimes, in the stillness of night, you press your hand to your own chest just to feel your heart beating, just to remember you're alive. You wonder if that's a kind of rebellion. Other women start coming to you with small questions. Quiet, careful inquiries. How did you get the baby to stop crying at night? How do you keep your cloth so clean? What do you do when he shouts? You give answers when you can. Sometimes you just nod and let them talk. You've become, in your quiet way, a kind of anchor, not because you're wise, but because you're still here. The new wife, Ellen, you've learned her name, walks with you to the well now. She talks a little more each day. She has bruises she doesn't explain. You don't ask. You talk about bread, about chickens, about the way the heat ruins the milk too fast. She listens. That's all most women need, someone who hears them. You hear her. Your children grow quickly. Your older boy speaks in full sentences, now asks questions about saints and storms, wants to know if birds have souls. You tell him yes. It's easier than trying to explain the church's answer. You want him to think the world is gentle for just a little longer. You've stopped bleeding again. You don't say anything yet. It could be a fluke, a trick of the summer heat. but your body feels different, heavier, familiar in a way that makes your stomach turn. You are likely pregnant. Again. You sit with this knowledge for days before telling anyone. Not out of shame, pregnancy is expected, praised even, but because you need time to mourn, time to accept that your body will be taken from you again, that the next year will be shaped not by your hands, but by your womb. When you finally tell your husband, he grunts approval and makes a passing comment about hoping for another son. Then he goes back to sharpening tools. You're dismissed as easily as a chore completed. You try not to let it sting. You knew better. But the knowing doesn't make it easier. As the weeks pass, your body changes. The nausea returns. Your limbs grow heavier. You keep moving. You must. Your children need you. The garden needs weeding. The bread needs baking. You learn to time your heaving to moments when you're already outside. No one notices. At night, you light a candle and sit by the hearth long after everyone else has gone to sleep. You press your hand to your belly and whisper not to the child, but to yourself. You remind yourself that you are still a person, that inside all the layers of linen and expectation, beneath the bruises and the calluses and the silences, there is still a soul that belongs only to you. You think of the saints again, the women ones, the ones who were martyred not for who they married, but for what they believed. You think of Saint Catherine, who argued with scholars and broke wheels with her faith. You think of Saint Cecilia, who sang through her suffering. You are not a saint, but you endure. You persist. And in a world like this, that might be the holiest act of all, you've lost track of how many months it's been now. The pregnancy presses forward, inevitable and consuming. Your body has become its own world again, tight with aches, hot with effort, drawn taut, like a stretched bow. You move more slowly, though you try to hide it. The children notice. Your husband pretends not to. The summer fields turn golden and wild. Wheat waves in the breeze like a sea, and the men begin sharpening scythes in anticipation. Harvest is coming, and with it an urgency that grips the whole village. Everyone must help. Everyone must give more than they have. The food for the year depends on what happens in these next few weeks. But you are told quietly and firmly to stay out of the fields this time. You're too far along, too swollen. One misstep in the furrows and you could fall. So you remain behind, managing the chaos that harvest brings from the cottage. It's hardly a reprieve. You prepare food in bulk for the field workers, stoke the hearth until your cheeks burn, wash sweat-stained linens in water so hot it scalds your knuckles. You mend sacks and oversee drying racks. You balance your toddler on one hip while stirring porridge with the other. You answer endless questions and silence tantrums with kisses, songs, or silence. And all the while the child inside you moves. He rolls and stretches, kicking up beneath your ribs, reminding you with every motion that your body is not your own. You sometimes catch your reflection in a warped tin plate, your face, rounder eyes, heavier neck, marked by the sun. You look older than you are. You feel older than your mother did at your age. But there is no time for reflection. There never is. Harvest brings its own kind of tension to the household. Your husband returns from the fields each evening drenched in sweat and short on words. If the yield is good, he drinks to celebrate. If it's poor, he drinks to forget. Either way, you keep his cup full and his path clear. You've become an expert at staying invisible when necessary. The new wife, Ellen, speaks to you more now. You often see her crouched in her garden at dusk, her face turned downward, as if searching for answers in the soil. She is not yet pregnant, and the village has noticed. People speak of her in whispers again, as though her body is a broken thing. She laughs too loudly, they say. She lingers at the market. Her husband has been seen visiting his brother late into the night. Some draw their own conclusions. You listen and say little. Ellen visits your cottage once or twice a week, now always under the guise of trading something: herbs, dried beans, bits of wool. But you both know it's not about the goods. She's searching for something you're not sure you can give. One afternoon, while your children sleep and the summer breeze flutters through the open shutters, she speaks plainly. Did you ever want to run? The question hangs in the air between you, weightless and crushing all at once. You look at her. She is still so young. Her eyes are ringed with shadows, her hands chapped and raw. She waits for your answer like it might save her. You choose your words carefully. Wanting is easy, you say. Doing is something else. She nods slowly, doesn't press further. But something shifts in her posture, as if she has received not an answer, but a truth she already knew. That night, you sit by the fire long after the children sleep, thinking of her. Of all the women who've ever thought about leaving. About the ones who disappeared into stories, into songs, into the woods. You don't judge them. Not anymore. But you also know the price they paid. The ones who ran were rarely caught. They simply vanished. But the ones who failed, those are the stories told to frighten girls into compliance. You've made your choice. Or rather, it was made for you. And now you keep moving forward. Because what else is there? One morning, a sharp pain wakes you before the sun. It's too early. You're not ready. The baby's not ready. You hope it's a false start, just the usual aches and shifting weight. But then it happens again, stronger this time. Deep and low and unmistakable. Labor. You don't panic. There's no time for that. You wake your husband, who stumbles from the bed and goes to fetch the midwife. You light the fire, boil water, strip. The bed, lay out cloths. You move on instinct. You are no longer a woman. You are a vessel, a process, a ritual. Ellen arrives with the midwife. She doesn't speak, just takes your older child's hand and leads him quietly from the house. You're grateful for it, though you can't say the words. You're already retreating into yourself. The labor is longer this time, slower, harder. Your body resists. It's as if it knows the cost of this and is trying to delay it. But there's no stopping what's already begun. The hours pass in heat and shadow. The pain comes in waves and you ride them as best you can, breath by breath. You scream. You cry out to saints whose names you barely remember. The midwife urges you on her hands, firm, her voice low. And then at last, a final push, a tearing, a flood of something too big to comprehend. The baby arrives. There's a pause, a terrifying silence, and then a wail, small, thin, but real. A girl. The midwife wraps her, places her in your arms. You stare at her face, impossibly small, impossibly perfect. You feel joy. You feel terror. You feel nothing. You feel everything. You think of what awaits her. You hold her tighter. Ellen enters quietly with your son, who tiptoes across the room to see his sister. He touches her hand wide-eyed. "Will she stay?" he whispers. You don't know how to answer, but you nod anyway, because tonight she is here. She is warm and breathing and real, and for now that's enough. The days after the birth pass in a blur of aching limbs and muffled cries. The summer heat presses down like a heavy cloak, making each task more difficult, each breath more labored. The baby your daughter nurses constantly, her tiny mouth pulling every bit of strength from your body. Your breasts are cracked and tender. Your muscles still protest with every movement. But the world does not pause for your recovery. There is no space for healing in a life like yours. You've done this before, yes, but it doesn't get easier. Each child leaves a new mark, not just on your skin stretched and scarred, but on your soul worn thinner with each round of labor, each night of fractured sleep, each moment you push through pain with a silent prayer and a clenched jaw. The older child, still just a boy himself, watches you with wide, uncertain eyes. He senses the shift. He clings more tightly, demands more fiercely. You soothe him with kisses and whispered stories, even when your head is pounding and your patience hangs by a thread. He was your first, the one who taught you how to mother. You cannot let him feel forgotten. Your daughter sleeps fitfully waking with the smallest creak of the door or change in your scent. You carry her constantly against your chest while you cook in your lap, while you sew cradled in your arms as you walk to the well. She cries often with that high, thin wail that slices through your spine. Your body tenses automatically when it starts, even if you're already holding her. And through it all, you perform the invisible rituals of wifehood. Meals appear on the table. Clothes are washed and hung. Floors are swept. Wounds are hidden. Needs are silenced. No one remarks on your strength. They simply expect it. Ellen visits often now. She brings bits of cheese herbs gossip. Her eyes have softened slightly. She speaks of dreams sometimes, but only when the room is truly quiet, when the children are sleeping, and the air feels safe. You never interrupt. You simply listen. And in that, there is something sacred, something close to what people call friendship, even if you'd never dare use the word aloud. She holds the baby once and stares at her for a long time. She'll be married before she's bled twice, Ellen says, her voice hollow. You know she's right. You nod and rock your daughter gently, the motion as natural to you now as breathing. You want to say something comforting, something that promises a better future, but you've stopped lying even kindly, so you just say, "We'll do what we can." It's harvest time again, though you barely notice. The days bleed into one another, one long line of need and effort. Your husband grows distant, or perhaps simply bored. He said little about the girl. He wanted another son. He hasn't touched you since the birth, though you know that will change. Soon. The moment your body stops being sore enough to excuse refusal, the expectation will return. You dread it, not the act itself, not entirely, but the erasure it represents. The way it reminds you that your body is a shared space, not your own. That even now, in the fog of sleepless nights and aching breasts, you are still expected to give more. You catch a fever briefly. Just a day or two. Nothing serious, thankfully. The midwife brings willow bark and insists you drink a foul-tasting brew. The children watch you closely. Your son cries when you doze too long. You push through the fever, return to your chores. Assure everyone you're fine before you really are. There's no room for sickness in a woman's life. Your husband never gets sick. Or if he does, he takes to bed without shame, demanding attention and quiet. You envy him in a way. His ability to stop, to be seen, to be cared for. You sometimes wonder what would happen if you stopped. Just stopped. Refused to rise. Refused to cook. Refused to smile. You know the answer, of course. You've seen what happens to women who can't or won't play the part. They become burdens. They become warnings. They vanish. So you rise. You do the work. You wear your smile like armor. The baby begins to smile. A small, crooked thing, more like a flicker than a beam. But it's there. You notice it first when you're singing to her an old lullaby your mother once hummed, something about stars and sheep and rest that never comes. She watches your face as if she already knows it by heart. You rock her and feel the weight of generations pressing behind your ribs. You think of your own mother, how young she seemed, and how old she must have felt. How quickly she slipped into this same rhythm. You wish you'd asked her more. You wish you'd known what to ask. Your husband's sister visits one afternoon, peering into the cradle like a judge. She looks delicate, she says. You'll need to toughen her up. Girls are no use if they're weak. You nod, but inside you boil. Not with anger, anger has long since dulled, but with the deep ache of knowing she's right. That the world your daughter has been born into will not offer softness. That her life, if it is to be survivable, must be made of endurance, not ease. You resolve then to teach her all the quiet skills, the invisible ones. How to smile when she's afraid. How to hide her thoughts. How to find moments of freedom inside a life that offers none. You will teach her to survive. You don't dare hope for more. That night when the house is still, you sit with the baby on your chest and the fire dwindling low. The air is warm, but you shiver anyway. Not from cold, but from the weight of it all. You whisper her name into the darkness. You promise to keep her safe. You make no promises about happiness. Not here. Not in this life. But safety you can try. And in this world, that's everything. The final days of summer bring with them a strange hush, as though the land itself is catching its breath before the descent into autumn. The air is still warm but softer, the sun lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the thatched rooftops. You feel the shift in your bones, in your spine, in your shoulders, in the heaviness behind your eyes. It's not just the season that's changing, something in you is too. Your daughter is growing quickly. She holds her head up now, watches the world, with that uncanny, unnerving gaze that babies have, the look of someone seeing everything and saying nothing. Her fingers curl around yours. She cries less now, or maybe you've simply learned the rhythms of her needs so well that you catch them before she needs to wail. Either way, you find yourself watching her with a strange ache in your chest, not love exactly, though of course it's love, but something more, something closer to grief. Because you already know what awaits her. You know how this world shapes girls into wives, and wives into workers, and workers into ghosts. And every time she smiles, your heart swells with joy and fear in equal measure. You hold her tightly, breathe in the scent of milk and cloth and skin, and try not to count the years she has left before the world claims her too. Your son has grown more independent, more bold. He's started to speak his mind, to ask why you look tired, to tug at your skirt when your gaze drifts too far. He tells you stories now half-formed and wild, full of dragons and saints and things he's imagined from the chapel wall paintings. You laugh sometimes, real laughter, surprised by the sound of it coming from your own mouth. He beams at you when you do, as if he's won a prize. You still carry the weight of everything, of course you do. But there are moments now, brief and fragile, when it feels lighter. When it feels like maybe, just maybe, this life won't drown you entirely. Your husband is more subdued lately. The strain of harvest, the pressure of taxes, the slow grind of village life, these things wear on him, as they do on all men. He speaks little, comes home with dirt under his nails and soreness in his limbs. Some nights he sleeps without a word. Others he reaches for you in the dark with a kind of tired familiarity. You let him. You've stopped expecting kindness. But cruelty, too, has dulled with time. What remains is obligation, routine, habit. You are no longer afraid of him, not exactly. The fear has calcified into something harder, something manageable. You know his moods. You know the warning signs. You know how to move through the narrow corridors of his expectations without catching his temper on your hem. The other women in this village are older now or gone. One died in childbirth, her fifth or sixth, no one was sure. Another moved away to live with a sister after her husband drank himself to death. One of the wealthier widows remarried a man half her age, and the gossip still hasn't stopped. Ellen is still here, still young, still sharp around the edges. She never conceived, and the village has turned colder toward her. Her husband speaks little, broods much. She's begun visiting you more openly. No more excuses of trade or borrowed spoons. She just appears, sets herself down with a sigh, and begins talking. Sometimes you talk back. Sometimes you just listen. You wonder privately how long she'll last here. Whether she'll become one of the stories, one of the girls who vanished, one of the wives who broke, one of the widows who endured. You hope she becomes something else, something better. But you don't say it aloud. Hopes are fragile things. They don't survive well here. You spend your days as you always have, working, cooking, nursing, praying. The rhythm is familiar now. Not pleasant, but known. You no longer fight it. You let it carry you like a river that never stops flowing. Some days it's easier. Some days it's not. The baby begins to teethe. Your breasts ache. You find yourself swaying even when you're not holding her, your body permanently set to soothe. You sing songs you don't remember learning. You dream of forests, of long roads, of places without walls. You wake with your daughter curled against you, and you forget the dream immediately. Your body has not bled again since the birth. You don't know whether to hope it stays that way. Part of you prays for a pause, for mercy. Another part knows that mercy doesn't often come to women like you. You keep your house clean. You keep your children fed. You keep your mouth closed. And still you think. You wonder. What if this girl, this daughter of yours, could have more? Not just survive, but live. What if she learned not just how to keep house and endure pain, but how to question, how to dream, how to want? What if she never had to marry? What if she never had to learn the quiet language of fear that every wife speaks? Eventually, you look down at her in your arms. She is watching you blinking slowly, mouth parted in sleep. She has no idea. You bend and kiss her forehead, gently, as if the act might cast a spell strong enough to protect her. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But you do it anyway, because you are her mother. Because in the Middle Ages, to be a woman is to suffer, and to be a wife is to endure. But to be a mother is to carry the full weight of hope and still somehow find the strength to whisper it into the future. So here you are again, back in the stillness of your own room, the story of another life stitched quietly into the fabric of your thoughts. Maybe the details feel far away now, the scratch of wool, the flicker of candlelight, the baby's weight in tired arms. Maybe it's all softened into a kind of haze, a quiet thrum of centuries past and lives forgotten. But if you're still listening, if your breath has slowed and your eyes are drifting closed, let this final part sink in gently. The women of the Middle Ages didn't choose this life, not really. They were born into it, shaped by it, buried beneath its weight. They weren't saints. They weren't rebels. Most of them were simply surviving, day by day, step by step, task by endless task. And yet, even in that survival, there was meaning. In each piece of bread baked, in each song hummed, in each glance exchanged over the rim of a water jug, even if no one wrote their names down. Maybe you're wondering what became of the woman we followed tonight. Maybe you already know. Maybe she lived to see her children grown. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she never escaped the weight of her marriage. But maybe, just maybe, she taught her daughter how to carry it a little differently. You don't have to know. You just have to rest now. Let the hum of the past lull you into quiet. Let the rhythm of history become the rhythm of your breath. And as the last candle flickers low